National Electrical Code, 2011 edition. I'm starting on page 70-22 in my 2011 edition code book. Couple of things I want to point out. If you look on the top left corner and the top right corner of each page, you'll see, like on page 70-22 in the top left corner, you'll see 90.1. And then on the page 70-23 on the top right corner, you'll see 90.5. 90.5 on page 70-23, you notice that at the very bottom of page 70-23 is the beginning of Article 90.5. Then on the previous page, 70-22, 90.1 up in the top left-hand corner, if you look down just a little ways, you'll see that that's where 90.1 begins on that page. So those are some kind of guidelines that you can use as you're thumbing through the book looking for articles. Now, Article 90, the introduction, this begins the code book, and I want you to notice how under Article 90 we actually have different parts of each article. We start off with the main article, and we'll have the primary article, and in this case the very first one is Article 90. Then under Article 90 it starts off with like Article 90.1, and then under Article 90.1 we're going to have Part A. And in this case, Part A is the practical safeguarding. And you can read this. It says the practical safeguarding. The purpose of this code is the practical safeguarding of persons and property from hazards arising from the use of electricity. So let's say that someone asked you what was the purpose of the code book. Well, you would just search in the code book. You would find Article 90. And in your reading, you would find that under Article 90.1, Part A, practical safeguarding, well, that's the purpose of this code book. Next, you'll see under Article 90.1, you'll see Part B, which is the adequacy of the code. And you can also read this. It says that the adequacy of this code contains provisions that are considered necessary for safety, compliance therewith, and proper maintenance results in an installation that is essentially free from hazard. So what it's saying is that you follow this code book and the installations that you will make will be safe. But it goes on to say that the installation will be free from hazard, but not necessarily efficient, convenient, or adequate for good service or future expansion. It will be safe, but it may not meet these other requirements. But here again, if we go back to Article 90.1, Part A, the purpose of this code book is to provide safety, safeguarding of people and property. So that's the purpose of the code. Then also under Article 90.1, you've got Part C, which is the intention of the code. You've got Part D, which is relation to other international standards. Then we go to Article 90.2, which is the scope of the code. Under Article 90.2, and I'm still on page 70-22, we've got Part A, which is the title is covered. And it says this code covers the installation of electrical conductors, equipment, and raceways. Now under Part A, we've got subpart 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then under Article 90.2, we've got Part B, which is what's not covered under the code. And under Part B, which is not what's not covered, you've got subparts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now under subpart 5, we've got subsection A, B, C, and D. Now C and D continues over on the next page, which is page 70-23. And what I want you to notice on page 70-23 on C and D is that C and D is highlighted. It's kind of a gray highlight. What this means is that this is new text, or this is what's been changed from the previous edition of the code book. I'm still on page 70-23 on the left-hand column. I'm looking down at Article 90.3, the code arrangement. It says this code is divided into the introduction, which is Article 90, and then 9 chapters. If you look over in the right-hand column at figure 90.3, the code arrangement, you'll see up at the top, it's got chapters 1 through 4. Chapter 1 is considered the general chapter. Chapter 2 is wiring and protection. Chapter 3 is wiring methods and materials. Chapter 4 is equipment for general use. And those are grouped together, and it says those apply generally to all electrical installations. Next, we have chapters 5, 6, and 7, where chapter 5 is for special occupancies, chapter 6 is for special equipment, and chapter 7 is special conditions. And those three are grouped together and says that these are supplements or modifies chapters 1 through 4. Then chapter 8 is communication systems, where chapter 8 is not subject to the requirements of chapters 1 through 7, except where the requirements are specifically referenced in chapter 8. And then chapter 9 are tables. On the right-hand column of page 70-23, I'm looking at Article 90.4. This is the enforcement of the code. Then at the very bottom, we've got Article 90.5, the mandatory rules, permissive rules, and explanatory material. And we've got Part A, which are the mandatory rules. Then I turn the page to 70-24. Part B are the permissive rules. Part C are the explanatory material. And then Part D, the informative annexes. And notice that this is highlighted, so this is new material. This was not in the previous edition of the code book. Then we've got Article 90.6, the formal interpretations. Then we go to Article 90.7, the examination of equipment for safety. Then in the right-hand column, we've got Article 90.8. And under 90.8, we have Part A, the future expansion and convenience, and Part B, number of circuits and enclosures. Then we have Article 90.9, units of measurement, and under Article 90.9, we have Parts A, B, C, and then under Part C, we've got Subpart 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have Part D, the compliance. And that wraps up Article 90, the introduction to the code. Suppose you were faced with a question. You were performing an installation and you were reading in the code book that a new product was required that was by the code book, but it was not yet available. In other words, you were not able to go to the hardware store and purchase a particular item that was needed for an installation you were performing. Is it possible for you to receive permission to proceed with the installation without using the new product? Could you find an answer in Article 90 that would answer that question for you? Well, what you would have to do is, and there's no easy way to go about finding an answer in the code book. My experience tells me that you simply have to sit down and read and dig and find the answer. So looking in Article 90, the introduction, I would just start reading and browsing, and eventually you'll find the answer. And in this case, if I'm working on an installation and the edition of the code book that I'm using is calling for a product to use an installation that's not yet available, if you look on page 70-23 at Article 90.4, the enforcement of the code, if you look at the third paragraph, it says, this code may require new products, constructions, or materials that may not yet be available at the time the code is adopted. So if I'm using the 2011 edition, which I am, and it's calling for a product that I'm not able to obtain, what do I do? The next sentence says, in such event, the authority having jurisdiction, in other words, whoever would be doing the inspection for my installation, they may permit the use of the products, constructions, or materials that comply with the most recent previous edition of this code adopted by the jurisdiction. So that would be my answer to that question.